exactly 116 days until my PhD is due. And no, I haven't started writing yet. And yes, that is cutting it pretty fine. No, I haven't got any funding left. But yeah, I'm okay. You know, I'm feeling really well. But yes, so I'm Eva. I'm a PhD student, still, for a bit, and I'm a developmental neuroscientist. So that means I try to use my own brain to understand how other brains grow. Now, I do this in fruit flies, specifically fruit fly larvae, so fruit fly baby brains. But the thing is, my PhD has turned out more like a 4-year-long episode of How It's Made, where the answers are fuck knows, but also, who cares? Now, just by talking about flies, I am pretty certain that there's a number of you in this room right now who have made a deeply, deeply incorrect assumption about me. You think that I like bugs. But the truth is, I work with fruit flies because I am lazy and they are convenient. That is literally it. They grow quickly, they breed quickly, they're extremely cheap. You can kill them by the thousands and not feel guilty about it, like, at all, at least in my lab. And the other thing is that statistically, final year PhD students are the most likely to forget what they were about to say on stage. So just give me one moment, please, while I refer to my notes. Aha. I have remembered, I think. Yes, so I don't actually particularly like insects, as none of you should. I have a firm don't come near me, you creepy bug policy in place in the rest of my life, thank you very much. And the type of work I do involves a lot of dissection. So that's dissecting very fragile 2mm by 1mm translucent brains out of live, wriggling 3mm long translucent animals. So it really helps if you have a steady hand, an eye for detail, and a real talent for angry sighing when you screw up. Fuck. The swearing also really, really helps. But after 4 years, I am proud to say that I dissected a rate of about 2 brains per minute. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Doing a PhD really does prepare you for the workforce and teach you highly transferable skills. Now, people always ask me how I can dissect something so small, because these larvae are really, really tiny. And it's true that I have good tools. So I use a microscope, I use very expensive tweezers, I use a needle stuck on the end of a stick. But the real advantage that my lab has when it comes to dissection is actually down to something that we all have inside of us. Something that we make and use every single day. Saliva. And now this is because dissected fly brains are actually surprisingly sticky. You could say, like the results of a poorly thought out political campaign with the potential to destroy our country's economy for several generations to come. No matter what you do, you just can't shake free of those consequences. No, because these fly brains are sticky, it makes it really tricky when we're trying to move them from one place to another. So what we do is we suck them up into these little glass tubes. But the problem is they get stuck to the inside of the glass. So if you spit into a plastic cup and then suck up some of the saliva into the glass tube, so the proteins in your saliva coat the inside, well, Voila! That glass is as slippery as the floor of the Regal at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Probably with fewer different types of bodily fluids involved. You know, people warned me that doing a PhD was going to be a lot of work, but I didn't realize it was going to require so much literal sweat. The other advantage, where if you're doing a PhD in dissecting fly brains, as I am, is if you're a naturally kind of a greasy person, like myself. And this is because we dissect on these small plastic plates, and which has the same problems as the glass, right? If it's too clean, then the brains just get stuck. So what we do in my lab at the University of Cambridge, the richest university in the United Kingdom, a university that reported assets of 12.2 billion money pounds last year. That's billion with a B. In my lab, what we do is we take our finger, we rummage around in the skin behind our ear, we smear the results onto the piece of plastic, and voila! No more sticky brains. So it really does help. And my supervisor is very sincere when he tells you about this technique as well. So when you're like a first-year PhD student, you come in the lab and you just really don't realize it's going to require so much of your bodily fluids. So I'm a PhD student. I spend quite a lot of time crying, obviously. And I do wish, though, that I had more time out of the lab for just sort of general angsting. You know, like, ideally, I'd like angst over here. And then maybe, you know, an angst over there. But supposedly, I'm an adult, and adults are supposed to process their emotions appropriately and, you know, feel them, forgive themselves for them, and then let them go and move on. But I find this really, really difficult. And that's partly because not only do I kind of take too much responsibility for my own emotions, but I absolutely take too much responsibility for everybody else's. Especially if that person is a dick. And I've always had this problem. The first time I watched The Little Mermaid when I was 5, I was devastated for days. And I'm like, poor Ursula. All she wanted was to be loved and have total dominion over all the creatures of the ocean. But, you know, we all get frustrated with patriarchal power structures sometimes. And, like, seriously, what is that trident if not a massively obvious overcompensation for the fact that fishy Mr. Kingfisher Man over here probably doesn't have a lot going on down there? And, like, take Maleficent, right? Look, I remember being 15, at home, Friday night, calling up my friend Chris to see if he would ask Josie Harris if I could go to her party, which everybody else was already at. And I could hear, over the sound of Justin Timberlake's sexy back and the ominous squelching that's a requirement of teenage parties, I heard Josie say, "Who? Eva? No." I know, sad. We all know how Maleficent felt. It's very hurtful finding out everyone's at a party that you haven't been invited to. And then Cruella de Vil, right? I found her the hardest as a teenager when I was rewatching it because obviously, you know, I found her kind of scary and kind of pitiful in a way, but also like mildly arousing. And that was just like very confusing for me. So it makes it really hard for me to enjoy movies, you know, especially if I'm watching with other people. And the thing is, I just can't help feeling sorry for the baddie. And maybe it makes sense because to about 70 gajillion fruit flies, I am the main baddie. So because of this problem, because of this sort of over-empathy issue, it means I find it really, really hard to assert myself. if I think of anything critical about someone, then this other person in my brain just pops up and starts saying things like, oh, what, Eva? You think you're so good that you can judge them? They were probably locked in a cupboard as a child. That explains it. What have you got to complain about? Ooh. Everyone has that voice, right? Right? So I had this exact problem a few weeks ago. Now I was in the lab in a dark, cold room. It was a Saturday afternoon, beautiful Saturday afternoon in July, a few weeks ago, and I was sitting at a very expensive microscope, taking some pictures of some fruit fly brains. And we all know that the only thing worse than being in this situation by yourself is for you to be in this situation in close proximity to another human being. And within a couple hours, some woman I don't know walked in. That's fine. I said, hello. She did not respond. Okay, I'm not so pleased that you're here either. So she sits down at the other microscope, and about 20 minutes in, she gets up and heads on over to the light switches. Now, what she does is she turns off the light that's over her microscope. Fair play. But what she also does is she turns on the light over my microscope. Now, to those of you not familiar with the ins and outs of microscope etiquette, this is like standing on the wrong side of the escalator at King's Cross during rush hour on a Monday morning. This is like basically murder, guys. This is like really, really bad. And so what I say is, do you think you could turn the light on only when you need it? Just because I'm imaging some very sensitive samples, thanks, please. And what she says is nothing, but she does turn the light back off. Great. So begins a very uncomfortable couple of hours of sitting silently next to each other. Or at least it was uncomfortable for me, because I couldn't stop thinking about how, oh gosh, she's probably sitting there thinking, I'm such a bitch. I had used a tone. I had not immediately acquiesced to what she wanted. I had asserted myself. And so what I did is, I was thinking, and who even is this lady who doesn't know proper microscope decorum? And so I looked up on the booking system, I looked up what her name was, just to see, if I recognised it, and I didn't. And so I searched her name in the department directory, just to see, and she's not a member of my department, she doesn't even go here, guys. And so I was like, okay, and so, I did a little bit more Googling, and I found that she did her PhD in a different Cambridge department, and she was actually currently doing her postdoc there, so she's also more senior than me. And yes, and so after a little bit more digging, I found her Facebook profile, I found her LinkedIn, I read a science blog that she contributed to in 2012. I read a panel ruling she did when she judged a science art competition in 2014, which, by the way, she made absolutely the right call. The watercolour of neuronal networks was perfect. All the while sitting there thinking, oh God, she probably thinks I'm such a bitch. She's probably going to tell all the other scientists how unreasonable you are. And so, as I was getting ready to leave, I wanted to say something to kind of smooth the situation over, and try and ensure that I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life thinking about the awkwardness of this moment. And so as I left, I said something, but what I didn't say was, have a good afternoon, or enjoy the rest of your weekend, or even just goodbye. What came out of my mouth at that moment was good luck. Good luck. Good luck. I may as well have said, good luck. I do so hope nothing misfortunate might befall you on your way home. And now, Obviously, that is not what I meant, but that is absolutely how she took it. Because she just looked at me like, who the fuck are you? And that just feels like such a valid question in my life at the moment, you know? Who the fuck am I? Who the fuck are any of you? I've had this worry in the back of my head ever since I was a teenager, you know? I'm so agreeable, you know? I'll always say yes, anything you need, whatever you want. Yes, yes, that's fine, yes. Yes, and that means that at the heart of it, who the fuck am I? And and I clearly didn't think I'd get stuck here because I have no notes. Yes, so yes, who the fuck am I? And also, if I had just learnt how to say no, then perhaps I wouldn't be in the situation I'm in. You know, like tonight, for example. I have 116 days left of my PhD. I'm still doing experiments in the lab. I have 80,000 words to write. Why the fuck did I say yes to being here tonight? That was my girlfriend, by the way. Yes, so, in that case, thank you very much. I'm going to go assert myself back to the lab.